एक ऐसी कम्युनिटी जिसका कल्चर, जिसके रीति रिवाज हजारों सालों से ऑलमोस्ट अनचेंज्ड हैं। फिर सडनली एक नया इन्फ्लुएंस आता है, एक नया रिलीजन, एक नई सोसाइटी। क्या होता है तब? क्या वो कम्युनिटी अपनी आइडेंटिटी खो देती है या एक नई हाइब्रिड आइडेंटिटी बनाती है?
और क्या इस चेंज की कीमत हमेशा वही कम्युनिटी चुकाती है?
एग्जैक्टली आज हम लोग ऐसी ही एक फैसिनेटिंग जर्नी पर चलने वाले हैं। हम इंडिया की ट्राइबल पॉपुलेशंस और उन पर अलग अलग मेन स्ट्रीम सोसाइटीज और रिलीजन्स के इम्पैक्ट की गहराई में उतरेंगे।
राइट। तो शुरू करने से पहले एक छोटा सा काम, जल्दी से सब्सक्राइब बटन पर क्लिक करो, नोटिफिकेशन बेल ऑन कर लो, और अगर ये डिस्कशन आगे इंटरेस्टिंग लगे तो एक कमेंट जरूर छोड़ना। लेट्स गेट स्टार्टेड।
बिल्कुल। आज का हमारा लर्निंग मैप काफी डिटेल्ड है। हम 11 स्पेसिफिक क्वेश्चंस को एक एक करके एक्सप्लोर करेंगे इन दिस एग्जैक्ट ऑर्डर।
11। वाह, ये तो काफी कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव होने वाला है।
हाँ, पहले ट्राइबल और नॉन ट्राइबल पॉपुलेशंस के कॉन्टैक्ट के सोशल और रिलीजियस कॉन्सिक्वेंसेस, फिर ट्राइबल कल्चर पर क्रिश्चियनिटी का क्रिटिकल असेसमेंट,
ओके।
उसके बाद हिंदुइज्म का इम्पैक्ट, नेक्स्ट बुद्धिज्म का इन्फ्लुएंस, फिर से क्रिश्चियनिटी के इम्पैक्ट पर एक दूसरा सवाल आएगा,
एक अलग एंगल से गेसिंग।
करेक्ट। इसके बाद इस्लाम का असर शेड्यूल्ड ट्राइब्स पर, फिर एक स्पेशल नोट ऑन इस्लाम एंड मैट्रिलिनी,
वो लक्षद्वीप वाला केस, राइट?
वही, फिर सेंट्रल इंडिया की ट्राइबल विमेन पर हिंदुइज्म का असर, एक और बार क्रिश्चियनिटी का इम्पैक्ट एक अलग पर्सपेक्टिव से,
ओके।
फिर हम रिलीजियस कन्वर्जन्स के ओवरऑल प्रोसेस को समझेंगे, और फाइनली हिंदू सोसाइटी का ट्राइबल पॉपुलेशन पर एक कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव डिस्कशन। तो चलिए इस एनालिसिस को शुरू करते हैं।
ओके, लेट्स अनपैक दिस। पहला सवाल है, एक्सप्लेन द सोशल एंड रिलीजियस कॉन्सिक्वेंसेज ऑफ कॉन्टैक्ट बिटवीन ट्राइबल एंड नॉन ट्राइबल पॉपुलेशंस 15 and 2022।
राइट।
Broad micro theme: social and religious impact of contact between tribal and non-tribal populations.
तो आसान शब्दों में ये सवाल उस प्रोसेस के बारे में है जिसमें जब ट्राइबल कम्युनिटीज, जिनका अपना एक अलग कल्चर होता है, नॉन ट्राइबल या मेन स्ट्रीम सोसाइटी के कांटेक्ट में आती हैं, तो उनके समाज और धर्म पर क्या असर पड़ता है।
और ये असर मतलब पॉजिटिव भी हो सकता है और नेगेटिव भी।
बिल्कुल, ये असर एसिमिलेशन यानी घुल मिल जाना भी हो सकता है, और रेजिस्टेंस यानी विरोध भी। इसको एक रियल लाइफ एग्जाम्पल से समझते हैं।
प्लीज।
सोचो एक गांव है जहां लोग सदियों से नेचर की पूजा करते हैं और सब कुछ मिल बांट कर करते हैं, एकदम कम्युनिटी ड्रिवन लाइफ।
ओके, एन इगलिटेरियन सोसाइटी।
एग्जैक्टली। फिर वहां एक शहर से लोग आकर रहने लगते हैं। धीरे धीरे गांव के लोग भी इंडिविजुअल प्रॉपर्टी और नए देवी देवताओं के बारे में सीखने लगते हैं। यही है कॉन्टैक्ट का असर।
हियर्स वेयर इट गेट्स रियली इंटरेस्टिंग। चलो इसके आंसर को 3 पार्ट्स में ब्रेक डाउन करते हैं। पहला, इंट्रोडक्शन।
इंट्रोडक्शन सेट करता है कि ये कॉन्टैक्ट एक प्रोफाउंडली ऑल्टरिंग प्रोसेस है, मतलब सब कुछ बदल देने वाला, और ये कॉलोनियल पॉलिसीज और इकोनॉमिक रीजन से ड्रिवन था।
राइट। इससे या तो आइडेंटिटी खत्म हुई या फिर नए स्ट्रक्चर्स बने।
करेक्ट। अब आते हैं बॉडी पर। पहला, सोशल कॉन्सिक्वेंसेस।
इसमें सबसे पहला पॉइंट है लॉस ऑफ डिस्टिंक्ट कल्चर। जैसे भिल्स और गोंड्स जैसी ट्राइब्स हिंदू सोसाइटी में इतना असिमिलेट हो गए कि उनके ओरिजिनल कस्टम्स कमजोर पड़ गए।
और दूसरा, इम्पोजिशन ऑफ कास्ट लाइक स्ट्रक्चर्स। पहले ट्राइबल सोसाइटीज एगैलिटेरियन थे, मतलब सब बराबर, लेकिन कॉन्टैक्ट के बाद उनमें कास्ट जैसी हायरार्की आ गई।
इसका कोई एग्जाम्पल है?
हाँ, राजगौंड्स ने सोशल मोबिलिटी के लिए कास्ट आइडेंटिटी अपनाई। ये प्रोसेस, जिसे एम.एन. श्रीनिवास ने संस्कृताइजेशन कहा, इसका एक परफेक्ट एग्जाम्पल है।
अच्छा।
और इसके अलावा
डिक्लाइन ऑफ कलेक्टिविज्म।
पहले सब कम्युनिटी बेस्ड था, अब इंडिविजुअलिस्टिक वैल्यूज आ गए। लेकिन एक पॉजिटिव साइड भी था।
वो क्या?
एक्सेस टू मॉडर्न सिस्टम्स। नॉर्थ ईस्ट इंडिया जैसे इलाकों में मिशनरी इंटरवेंशन से लिटरेसी रेट बढ़ी और लोगों को मॉडर्न लीगल और पॉलिटिकल सिस्टम्स का एक्सेस मिला।
ये तो हुई सोशल कॉन्सिक्वेंसेस की बात।
हाँ।
अब रिलीजियस कॉन्सिक्वेंसेस क्या थे? इसमें पहला है हिंदुआइजेशन। जैसे ओरान्स और भिल्स जैसे ट्राइब्स ने हिंदू गॉड्स शिवा और विष्णु को अपने पैंथियन में शामिल कर लिया। जीएस घुरिये ने इसे हिंदुआइजेशन कहा।
और दूसरा क्रिश्चियनाइजेशन, राइट।
बिल्कुल। खासी, मीजो और नागा ट्राइब्स में क्रिश्चियन मिशनरीज ने सिग्निफिकेंट कन्वर्जन्स किए। इससे एजुकेशन और हेल्थ केयर तो बेहतर हुई, पर कल्चरल शिफ्ट्स भी आए,
जिसका सीधा असर उनके इंडिजिनस रिलीजन्स पर पड़ा। जैसे संथाल का सरना रिलीजन, जो नेचर वर्शिप है, वो डिक्लाइन हुआ।
हाँ, लेकिन इसका रिएक्शन भी हुआ, रिवाइवल एंड रेजिस्टेंस। इसके रिएक्शन में बिरसा मुंडा मूवमेंट 1899-1900 जैसे मूवमेंट्स ने ट्राइबल रिलीजन को रिवाइव करने की कोशिश की।
तो कंक्लूजन क्या निकलता है इसका? कंक्लूजन वेरियल एल्विन की चिंता को हाईलाइट करता है कि इंटीग्रेशन और मॉडर्नाइजेशन के चक्कर में कल्चरल डिस्टिंक्टिवनेस का नुकसान हुआ। सो डेवलपमेंट और ऑटोनॉमी में एक बैलेंस जरूरी है।
ये तो बहुत क्लियर हो गया। चलो इस पर कुछ क्रॉस क्वेश्चंस डिस्कस करते हैं। पहला, स्ट्रक्चर पर। इंट्रोडक्शन में एसिमिलेशन और कल्चरल रेजिस्टेंस जैसे कीवर्ड्स यूज करना क्यों जरूरी है?
बहुत अच्छा सवाल। ये शुरू में ही एग्जामिनर को बता देता है कि आप टॉपिक के दोनों पहलू समझते हैं। इट क्रिएट्स अ बैलेंस्ड फर्स्ट इंप्रेशन।
गॉट इट। अब एक कंटेंट क्वेश्चन, संस्कृताइजेशन का कंसेप्ट यहाँ इतना इंपॉर्टेंट क्यों है?
क्योंकि ये उस स्पेसिफिक प्रोसेस को एक्सप्लेन करता है जिससे ट्राइबल ग्रुप्स सोशल स्टेटस बढ़ाने के लिए डोमिनेंट हिंदू कास्ट के कस्टम्स अपना लेते हैं। ये हाउ का आंसर देता है, फिर डिवाइड करने का क्या फायदा है? सिंपल है, ये आंसर को एक क्लियर स्ट्रक्चर देता है, पढ़ने में आसान बनाता है और इंश्योर करता है कि क्वेश्चन के दोनों पार्ट्स को आसानी से एड्रेस किया गया है, नो कंफ्यूजन।
मेक सेंस। कंटेंट क्वेश्चन, बिरसा मुंडा मूवमेंट का जिक्र करना क्यों रेजिस्टेंस का एक पावरफुल एग्जांपल है?
क्योंकि देखो, ये सिर्फ एक रिलीजियस मूवमेंट नहीं था, ये एक पॉलिटिकल और कल्चरल रिवॉल्ट भी था, कॉलोनियल और एक्सटर्नल रिलीजियस इन्फ्लुएंसेस के खिलाफ। इट वाज अ कंप्लीट पैकेज ऑफ रेजिस्टेंस।
अच्छा, एक और स्ट्रक्चर क्वेश्चन, कंक्लूजन में वेरियर एल्विन जैसे स्कॉलर का नाम मेंशन करना आंसर को कैसे स्ट्रेंथन करता है?
ये आपके आर्ग्यूमेंट को एक अथॉरिटेटिव वॉइस देता है। ये दिखाता है कि आपने सब्जेक्ट के एक्सपर्ट्स को पढ़ा है, सिर्फ जनरल नॉलेज नहीं लिख रहे।
लास्ट क्वेश्चन, पॉजिटिव कॉन्सिक्वेंसेस जैसे एक्सेस टू मॉडर्न सिस्टम्स लिखना जरूरी है या सिर्फ नेगेटिव पर फोकस करें?
बहुत जरूरी है। एक बैलेंस्ड आंसर हमेशा दोनों पॉजिटिव और नेगेटिव इम्पैक्ट्स को दिखाता है। ये एक नुआंस्ड अंडरस्टैंडिंग रिफ्लेक्ट करता है, सिर्फ क्रिटिसिज्म नहीं, क्रिटिकल एनालिसिस।
Wow, that's insightful. Chalo, viewers, now pause and practice saying this. Contact between tribal and non-tribal populations leads to both assimilation, like Hinduization, and resistance, like the Birsa Munda movement. Rehearse this line.
बिल्कुल, इससे कॉन्सेप्ट क्लियर हो जाएगा।
So, a quick mini recap.
ये सवाल बताता है कि ट्राइबल और नॉन ट्राइबल कॉन्टैक्ट एक डबल एजेड सॉर्ड है। मॉडर्नाइजेशन लाता है पर कल्चरल आइडेंटिटी को चैलेंज भी करता है।
Perfectly put. Okay, अगले सवाल पर चलते हैं। ये है critically assess the impact of Christianity on tribal culture and identity. 15M 2021. Critically assess. ये कीवर्ड इंपॉर्टेंट है।
क्रिटिकली असेस, ये कीवर्ड इंपॉर्टेंट है।
Broad micro theme, impact of Christianity on tribal culture and identity.
तो ये सवाल क्रिश्चियनिटी के ट्राइबल सोसाइटीज पर असर को क्रिटिकली असेस करने को कहता है। इसका मतलब है हमें सिर्फ अच्छे या सिर्फ बुरे पॉइंट्स नहीं बताने, बल्कि दोनों को एनालाइज करना है, प्रोज एंड कॉन्स दोनों।
एक रियल लाइफ एग्जांपल से समझा सकते हैं?
जरूर। इमेजिन एक स्टूडेंट को एक नए मॉडर्न स्कूल में दाखिला मिलता है, उसको अच्छी एजुकेशन, स्पोर्ट्स फैसिलिटीज मिलती हैं, ये हुआ पॉजिटिव इम्पैक्ट।
राइट।
लेकिन वहां जाकर वो अपने पुराने दोस्तों और अपने ट्रेडिशनल गेम्स को भूल जाता है, ये हो गया नेगेटिव इम्पैक्ट। क्रिश्चियनिटी का इम्पैक्ट भी कुछ ऐसा ही कॉम्प्लेक्स था।
लेट्स ब्रेक इट डाउन। इंट्रोडक्शन स्टैटिस्टिक्स से स्टार्ट होता है। सेंसस 2011 के मुताबिक 1.03 करोड़ ट्राइबल्स क्रिश्चियन हैं, विच इज 9.9% ऑफ द टोटल ट्राइबल पॉपुलेशन, खासकर मेघालय और नागालैंड में।
ये डेटा कॉन्टेक्स्ट सेट करता है, बताता है कि हम किसी छोटे-मोटे इन्फ्लुएंस की बात नहीं कर रहे।
करेक्ट। अब बॉडी में आते हैं। पहले पॉजिटिव इम्पैक्ट्स। इसमें सबसे पहले है सोशियो इकोनॉमिक डेवलपमेंट। मिशनरीज ने लिटरेसी और हेल्थ केयर बेहतर की। इवन वेरियर एल्विन ने इसे एक्नॉलेज किया।
दूसरा पॉजिटिव इम्पैक्ट है पॉलिटिकल मोबिलाइजेशन। क्रिश्चियनिटी ने बिखरे हुए ट्राइबल ग्रुप्स को एक यूनिफाइंग फ्रेमवर्क दिया। इसका एग्जाम्पल है नागा नेशनल मूवमेंट, जो क्रिश्चियन आइडियल्स पर बेस्ड था।
इंटरेस्टिंग। तीसरा,
सोशल रिफॉर्म। संथाल जैसे ट्राइब्स में डेट बॉन्डेज और विच हंटिंग जैसे एक्सप्लॉयटेटिव प्रैक्टिसेस को चैलेंज किया गया। CS रॉय ने हाईलाइट किया कि इससे ट्राइबल वुमेन का स्टेटस भी इंप्रूव हुआ।
और चौथा पॉइंट, सिंक्रेटिज्म। मतलब कुछ जगहों पर क्रिश्चियनिटी ने लोकल ट्रेडिशंस को अपनाया, जैसे मेघालय के खासी क्रिश्चियंस ने अपने न्याम खासी फेथ के एलिमेंट्स को शामिल रखा।
हाँ, एक कंप्लीट टेकओवर नहीं हुआ। अब आते हैं नेगेटिव इम्पैक्ट्स और कल्चरल फ्रैगमेंटेशन पर। इसमें पहला है इरोजन ऑफ इंडिजिनस प्रैक्टिसेस। सरना धर्मा जैसे ट्रेडिशनल रिलीजन्स का डिक्लाइन हुआ। वेरियर एल्विन ने इसे कल्चरल एलियनेशन कहा।
दूसरा है सोशल फ्रैगमेंटेशन।
एक ही ट्राइब में क्रिश्चियंस और नॉन क्रिश्चियंस के बीच टेंशंस पैदा हो गए। क्रिस्टोफ फॉन फ्यूरर हेमेंडॉफ ने इस पर काफी लिखा है।
गॉट इट। इसके अलावा
वीकनिंग ऑफ ट्रेडिशनल पॉलिटी, जो उनके ट्रेडिशनल गवर्नेंस सिस्टम्स थे वो कमजोर पड़ गए। और आखिरी डिपेंडेंसी। LP विद्यार्थी ने क्रिटिसाइज किया कि एजुकेशन और हेल्थ केयर के लिए मिशनरी इंस्टीट्यूशंस पर डिपेंडेंसी बढ़ गई, जिससे ट्राइबल ऑटोनॉमी कम हुई।
तो इसका कंक्लूजन क्या होगा?
कंक्लूजन एक कॉम्प्लेक्स डाइकोटमी यानी जटिल द्विभाजन की बात करता है। SC रॉय और वेरियर एल्विन ने सोशियो इकोनॉमिक अपलिफ्टमेंट को माना, जबकि LP विद्यार्थी और हाइमेंडॉफ ने कल्चरल इरोजन को क्रिटिसाइज किया। तो इसका कोई सिंपल आंसर नहीं है।
राइट। लेट्स हैव सम क्रॉस क्वेश्चंस। स्ट्रक्चर क्वेश्चन। क्रिटिकली असेस वाले क्वेश्चन में पॉजिटिव और नेगेटिव पॉइंट्स को अलग-अलग हेडिंग्स में लिखना बेस्ट अप्रोच क्यों है?
क्योंकि ये स्ट्रक्चर आपके क्रिटिकल एनालिसिस को क्लियरली डिमॉन्स्ट्रेट करता है। एग्जामिनर को सीधे दिखता है कि आपने इशू के दोनों साइड्स को कंसिडर किया है। इट्स क्लीन एंड इफेक्टिव।
ओके, कंटेंट क्वेश्चन। सिंक्रेटिज्म का एग्जांपल, जैसे खासी क्रिश्चियंस का, देना क्यों इंपॉर्टेंट है?
ये दिखाता है कि इम्पैक्ट हमेशा ब्लैक एंड व्हाइट नहीं होता। कई बार कल्चर्स एक दूसरे से बोरो करके एक नया मिक्स्ड कल्चर बनाते हैं। इट एड्स न्यूआंस टू द आंसर।
एक और स्ट्रक्चर्ड क्वेश्चन। इंट्रोडक्शन में डेटा सेंसस 2011 यूज करने से क्या फायदा होता है?
ये आपके आंसर को एक फैक्चुअल और क्रेडिबल बेस देता है। ये सिर्फ ओपिनियंस नहीं, बल्कि एविडेंस बेस्ड एनालिसिस लगता है। इट शोज यू डन योर होमवर्क।
कंटेंट क्वेश्चन। LP विद्यार्थी का डिपेंडेंसी वाला आर्गुमेंट क्या है? थोड़ा और इलैबोरेट करें।
उनका कहना था कि जब मिशनरीज सब कुछ जैसे एजुकेशन, हेल्थ प्रोवाइड करने लगे तो ट्राइब्स ने सेल्फ रिलायंस खो दी और उन पर निर्भर हो गए। इस डिपेंडेंसी से उनकी अपनी ऑटोनॉमी, उनका सेल्फ गवर्नेंस कम हो गया।
अच्छा, स्ट्रक्चर क्वेश्चन। कंक्लूजन में स्कॉलर्स के कॉन्फ्लिक्टिंग व्यूज जैसे रॉय वर्सेस विद्यार्थी को मेंशन करना आंसर को कैसे रैप अप करता है?
ये एक फाइनल समरी देता है कि इस टॉपिक पर कोई एक सिंपल आंसर नहीं है। एक्सपर्ट्स भी इस पर अलग अलग राय रखते हैं। दिस शोज अ मैच्योर अंडरस्टैंडिंग कि आपको पता है कि डिबेट अभी भी ऑन है।
ठीक है। लास्ट वन, पॉलिटिकल मोबिलाइजेशन जैसे नागा नेशनल मूवमेंट को पॉजिटिव इम्पैक्ट में क्यों रखा गया है?
क्योंकि इसने अलग अलग नागा ग्रुप्स को एक कॉमन आइडेंटिटी और प्लेटफॉर्म दिया। इससे वो अपने राइट्स के लिए एकजुट होकर लड़ सके। बिफोर दैट वो फ्रैगमेंटेड थे।
Brilliant. Okay, listeners, time for a quick practice. Pause and say, Christianity's impact is a dichotomy. It brought socio-economic development, but also led to cultural erosion and fragmentation. Practice this.
गुड आइडिया। इससे आधी स्टोरी याद हो जाएगी।
और मिनी recap.
क्रिश्चियनिटी ने ट्राइबल्स को मॉडर्न अपॉर्चुनिटीज दी, लेकिन इसकी कीमत उनकी ट्रेडिशनल कल्चर और सोशल यूनिटी को चुकानी पड़ी।
Next up. Question है, explain the impact of Hinduism on tribal people of India. 15M 2020.
ओके, ये क्रिश्चियनिटी से काफी अलग है।
Broad micro theme. Influence of Hinduism on the cultural, social, and religious structures of Indian tribal communities.
तो आसान भाषा में ये सवाल हिंदुइज्म और ट्राइबल कम्युनिटीज के बीच के इंटरैक्शन को एक्सप्लोर करने को कहता है। इसमें कल्चरल एक्सचेंज, एसिमिलेशन और सिंक्रेटिज्म यानी मिश्रण तीनों शामिल हैं।
और इसमें M.N. श्रीनिवास का संस्कृताइजेशन का कॉन्सेप्ट सेंट्रल होगा, है ना?
बिल्कुल, यहाँ वो कॉन्सेप्ट फिर से आएगा। इसको समझने के लिए एक रियल लाइफ एग्जाम्पल लेते हैं।
Let's hear it.
सोचो एक लोकल स्ट्रीट फूड स्टॉल है जो बहुत फेमस है। एक बड़ी फूड चेन उस स्टॉल को खरीद लेती है। अब वहाँ वही लोकल डिश मिलती है, लेकिन थोड़े अलग तरीके से, स्टैंडर्ड पैकेजिंग में और चेन के ब्रांड नेम के साथ।
ओरिजिनल फ्लेवर थोड़ा बदल जाता है।
एग्जैक्टली। हिंदुइज्म का इम्पैक्ट कुछ ऐसा ही था।
Okay, let's unpack this with the three-part structure. इंट्रोडक्शन M.N. श्रीनिवास के संस्कृताइजेशन कॉन्सेप्ट से शुरू होता है। ये सेट करता है कि ट्राइबल ग्रुप्स सोशल लैडर में ऊपर जाने के लिए हाई कास्ट हिंदू कस्टम्स, रिचुअल्स और आइडियोलॉजी को अपनाते हैं।
राइट।
अब आते हैं बॉडी के पहले पार्ट पर, रिलीजियस सिंक्रेटिज्म एंड कल्चरल असिमिलेशन।
इसमें पहला पॉइंट है इंटीग्रेशन ऑफ ट्राइबल डेटीज।
हाँ, यहाँ पर हम देखते हैं कि कैसे ट्राइबल देवताओं को हिंदू पैंथियन में शामिल कर लिया गया। क्लासिक एग्जाम्पल है ओडिशा के खंदास ट्राइब के देवता जगन्नाथ। उन्हें लॉर्ड विष्णु का रूप मान लिया गया। वेरियर एल्विन ने इसे डिस्क्राइब किया।
अच्छा।
और दूसरा पॉइंट, अडॉप्शन ऑफ हिंदू रिचुअल्स जैसे गोंड्स और संथाल जैसे ट्राइब्स अब होली और दिवाली जैसे हिंदू फेस्टिवल्स मनाते हैं। करेक्ट।
और इसका एक नेगेटिव कॉन्सिक्वेंस भी है, इरोजन ऑफ ट्राइबल आइडेंटिटी। भिल्स और ओरॉन्स के इंडिजिनस प्रैक्टिसेस इतने ज्यादा हिंदू रिचुअल्स से मिल गए हैं कि उनकी अलग पहचान कम हो रही है। क्रिस्टोफ जेफ्रेलॉट ने इसे हाईलाइट किया है।
ओके, अब बॉडी के दूसरे पार्ट पर आते हैं, सोशियो स्ट्रक्चरल एंड पॉलिटिकल चेंजेस।
इसमें पहला पॉइंट G.S. घुरिये का ऑब्जर्वेशन है, इंट्रोडक्शन ऑफ कास्ट लाइक हायरार्की। गोंड्स और ओरॉन्स जैसे इगैलिटेरियन ट्राइब्स में प्यूरिटी एंड पोल्यूशन के बेसिस पर स्ट्रैटिफिकेशन यानी ऊंच नीच शुरू हो गई।
ये तो काफी सीरियस इंपैक्ट है। और इकोनॉमिक साइड पर?
इकोनॉमिक मार्जिनलाइजेशन। D.D. कोसाम्बी ने नोट किया कि एसिमिलेशन के बाद कई ट्राइबल्स को हिंदू फ्यूडल स्ट्रक्चर्स में बॉन्डेड लेबरर्स यानी बंधुआ मजदूर बना दिया गया।
और पॉलिटिकल लेवल पर?
पॉलिटिकल सबसम्पशन जूलियस लिपनर के अनुसार हिंदुत्व आइडियोलॉजी ने ट्राइबल आइडेंटिटीज को एक यूनिफाइड हिंदू आइडेंटिटी के नीचे लाने की कोशिश की।
तो उसका कंक्लूजन क्या होगा?
कंक्लूजन वेरियर एल्विन की बात को रीआइटरेट करता है कि कल्चरल एनरिचमेंट के साथ साथ यूनिक ट्राइबल प्रैक्टिसेस और उनकी इकोलॉजिकल नॉलेज का नुकसान हुआ। और एल के महापात्रा के आर्गुमेंट के साथ एंड होता है कि इससे कल्चरल होमोजेनाइजेशन यानी सबका एक जैसा हो जाना का खतरा है।
दिस इज वेरी कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव। चलो इस पर कुछ क्रॉस क्वेश्चंस हो जाएं। स्ट्रक्चर क्वेश्चन, इस आंसर की शुरुआत संस्कृताइजेशन की डेफिनेशन से करना क्यों एक स्मार्ट मूव है?
क्योंकि ये कॉन्सेप्ट पूरे आंसर का थ्योरेटिकल फाउंडेशन है। इसे डिफाइन करके आप एग्जामिनर को दिखाते हैं कि आप कोर आइडिया समझ गए हैं, आपने बेस सेट कर दिया।
जगन्नाथ DT का एग्जाम्पल सिंक्रेटिज्म को कैसे परफेक्टली इलस्ट्रेट करता है?
ये दिखाता है कि एसिमिलेशन हमेशा एक टेकओवर नहीं होता। यहाँ एक ट्राइबल DT को एक बड़े रिलीजन ने आदर के साथ एब्जॉर्ब कर लिया, क्रिएटिंग अ शेयर्ड कल्चरल सिंबल। इट्स अ टू वे स्ट्रीट।
अच्छा, अब ये बताओ, इकोनॉमिक मार्जिनलाइजेशन और पॉलिटिकल सबसम्पशन में क्या फंडामेंटल डिफरेंस है?
गुड क्वेश्चन। इकोनॉमिक मार्जिनलाइजेशन उनके जमीन और रिसोर्सेज के छिनने से रिलेटेड है। इट्स अबाउट लाइवलीहुड। पॉलिटिकल सबसम्पशन उनकी अलग पॉलिटिकल आइडेंटिटी को एक बड़ी नेशनल आइडेंटिटी जैसे हिंदू के अंदर डिसॉल्व करने की कोशिश है। इट्स अबाउट आइडेंटिटी पॉलिटिक्स।
अंडरस्टूड। स्ट्रक्चर्ड क्वेश्चन, आंसर के दो मेन सेक्शंस A एंड B को रिलीजियस, कल्चरल और सोशो स्ट्रक्चरल पॉलिटिकल में बांटने से क्या क्लैरिटी मिलती है?
ये इम्पैक्ट की दो अलग अलग डायमेंशंस को साफ साफ दिखाता है। एक उनके बिलीव्स और कल्चर पर असर है, दूसरा उनके समाज, इकोनॉमी और पॉलिटिक्स पर। इट हेल्प्स इन ऑर्गेनाइजिंग द थॉट्स क्लियरली।
राइट। कंटेंट क्वेश्चन, जीएस घुरिये का ट्राइब्स स्ट्रैटिफाइंग देमसेल्व्स का ऑब्जर्वेशन इंपॉर्टेंट क्यों है?
क्योंकि ये बताता है कि हायरार्की सिर्फ उन पर थोपी नहीं गई। कुछ केसेस में सोशल मोबिलिटी के लिए उन्होंने खुद भी इसे अपनाया। इट शोज देयर एजेंसी इन द प्रोसेस, हाउएवर लिमिटेड इट वाज।
ओके, लास्ट स्ट्रक्चर क्वेश्चन। कंक्लूजन में वेरियर एल्विन और एल.के. महापात्रा दोनों का जिक्र क्यों किया गया है?
वेरियर एल्विन कल्चरल लॉस पर फोकस करते हैं, जो इमीडिएट इम्पैक्ट है, जबकि महापात्रा इसके लॉन्ग टर्म कॉन्सिक्वेंस यानी कल्चरल होमोजेनाइजेशन पर। दोनों मिलकर एक पावरफुल कंक्लूडिंग आर्गुमेंट बनाते हैं, फ्रॉम इमीडिएट टू लॉन्ग टर्म।
गॉट इट, दिस इज डीप स्टफ। चलो सब लोग प्रैक्टिस दिस सेंटेंस, पॉज करके बोलो। Hinduism's impact involved Sanskritization and syncretism, like the integration of the Jagannath deity, but it also introduced caste-like hierarchies and led to economic marginalization.
परफेक्ट लाइन फॉर प्रैक्टिस।
Mini recap.
टू सम अप, हिंदुइज्म ने ट्राइबल्स को मेन स्ट्रीम से जोड़ा, लेकिन इस प्रोसेस में उनकी सोशल इक्वालिटी, इकोनॉमिक ऑटोनॉमी और यूनिक कल्चरल आइडेंटिटी पर गहरा असर पड़ा।
Excellent. Now let's move on to the fourth question. This one is about Buddhism. Discuss the influence of Buddhism on the tribal population of India. 10M 2019.
अच्छा, a shorter question but very important.
Broad micro-theme, the egalitarian appeal and socio-cultural impact of Buddhism on Indian tribes.
So the core idea here is that Buddhism offered an alternative path. Hindu model was assimilation into a hierarchy. Christian model was conversion to a new system. Buddhism's appeal was its egalitarian message, the idea of equality.
अच्छा, इसके लिए कोई रियल लाइफ एनालॉजी?
हाँ बिल्कुल। इमेजिन एक कॉर्पोरेट लैडर है जिसमें नीचे से ऊपर जाना बहुत मुश्किल है। फिर एक स्टार्टअप आता है जो कहता है यहाँ कोई लैडर नहीं है, सब बराबर है, फ्लैट हायरार्की है।
लोग नेचुरली उस स्टार्टअप की तरफ अट्रैक्ट होंगे ना?
Exactly. Buddhism was that startup for many tribal and lower caste groups. It offered a way out of the rigid caste structure.
So let's break down the answer. The introduction would set this context right, that Buddhism provided an ideological alternative to Brahminical Hinduism.
Correct. It challenged the caste system and attracted marginalized groups looking for social dignity. Thinkers like B.R. Ambedkar also saw it as a liberative force.
Okay, body में क्या points आएंगे?
पहला, social upliftment and escape from caste oppression. Chakmas and Hajongs of northeast India adopted Buddhism to escape the caste-based discrimination they faced.
Right. ये तो सीधा-सीधा social mobility का केस है.
दूसरा, cultural syncretism. It wasn't always a complete conversion. Many tribes in Ladakh and Arunachal Pradesh blended Buddhist philosophies with their pre-existing animistic or born practices. ये एक partial assimilation था.
So they didn't have to completely abandon their old ways.
Exactly. तीसरा point है role of monasteries. Buddhist monasteries became centers of not just religion, but also education, trade, and even political networking. इसने isolated tribes को एक larger world से connect किया.
पर इसका impact इतना widespread क्यों नहीं हुआ?
वही है, आखिरी part. Limitations and decline. पहला, the influence was geographically limited, mostly to the Himalayan region and parts of the northeast. Dusra, the resurgence of Brahminism in medieval India led to the decline of Buddhism's influence.
तो conclusion क्या होगा?
The conclusion would be that while Buddhism's impact wasn't as widespread as Hinduism or Christianity, it offered a significant egalitarian alternative. It empowered certain communities, but its overall influence remained limited and uneven.
Clear. Let's do some quick cross questions. Structure question. Why is it important to start with the egalitarian appeal in the introduction?
Because that's the main hook of Buddhism for tribal societies. It directly addresses the why. Why would they choose Buddhism? Because it offered equality.
The Chakma and Hajong example, what does it specifically show? It shows that religious conversion is often a strategy for social and political empowerment, not just a spiritual choice. It's a form of protest.
Why is it good to have a limitations section in the body?
It provides a balanced view. It shows you're not just praising Buddhism, but also understanding the historical reasons for its limited spread. It makes the answer more critical.
Makes sense. Content question. What is the difference between Buddhist syncretism and Christian syncretism we discussed earlier?
Broadly similar, but the key difference is often in the power dynamic. Buddhist syncretism in many tribal areas was more of a voluntary blend. Christian syncretism was sometimes a strategic adaptation by missionaries to make the religion more acceptable.
Subtle but important difference. Okay, what's a good way to structure the conclusion for this answer? A good conclusion would contrast its potential with its actual limited impact. Something like, while Buddhism offered a powerful ideology of equality, its geographical and historical limitations prevented it from becoming a pan-tribal phenomenon.
How does mentioning B.R. Ambedkar strengthen the answer?
It connects the historical process to a major modern figure and movement. It shows that Buddhism's appeal to the oppressed is not just a medieval story, but a living political idea in modern India.
Fantastic. All right. Listeners, let's practice this. Pause and say, Buddhism offered an egalitarian alternative to the caste system, but its influence on tribal populations was geographically and historically limited.
Rehearse that. It's the core idea.
Mini recap.
Buddhism was a path to social dignity for some tribes, but it never became a mass movement across India's tribal belt.
This is getting clearer and clearer. हमने Hinduism, Christianity, Buddhism सब cover कर लिया है. Now let's move to the next question.
Okay, let's continue. The fifth question is a repeat, in a way.
Explain the impact of Christianity on the tribal communities in India with suitable examples. 15M 2018.
Yes, so this is similar to the second question, but asks to explain rather than critically assess.
Broad micro theme. A detailed explanation of the socio-economic and cultural changes brought by Christianity to tribal communities.
The approach here will be slightly different, less focus on the debate and more on explaining the what and how of the impact with clear examples.
So a more descriptive approach.
Exactly.
The real-life example we used earlier still fits perfectly. The student who gets into a modern school, gains education, but loses touch with his roots. Right. Let's break it down. Introduction would again set the context of missionary work starting in the colonial era, focusing on education, health, and spiritual conversion.
Right. Now for the body, we can structure it thematically. First theme, educational and health advancements.
Example for this?
The state of Mizoram. The Presbyterian and Baptist missionaries introduced the Roman script for the Mizo language, leading to Mizoram having one of the highest literacy rates in India today. That's a huge, tangible impact.
Okay, second theme.
Cultural transformation and identity shift. This is where we explain the decline of indigenous practices. For example, the decline of the Morung bachelor dormitory system among the Nagas, which was a central institution for social education.
That's a very specific example. What's the third theme?
G. Social and political unification. As we discussed before, Christianity provided a common ideology that helped unify disparate tribal groups. The formation of the state of Nagaland was in part driven by a unified Naga identity, strengthened by a common religion.
And the fourth theme must be the negative side.
Yes, social division and conflict. We can use the example of the Santhal community in Jharkhand and West Bengal, where there are clear social divisions and sometimes friction between the Christian Santhals and those who follow the traditional Sarna faith.
So the conclusion here would summarize these impacts?
Yes, it would state that Christianity's impact has been profound and multifaceted, bringing tangible development while also causing significant cultural shifts and social rifts. It's a story of both empowerment and alienation.
All right, let's get to the cross questions. Structure question. Since this is an explain question, why is a thematic structure better than a simple pro-con list?
Because explain requires showing the mechanics of the change. A thematic structure like education, culture, politics allows you to delve deeper into how the change happened in each sphere, which is more explanatory than just listing good and bad points.
The Morung example is very powerful. Why is such a specific example better than a general statement?
Specificity brings an answer to life. Decline of traditional institutions is an abstract idea. Decline of the Naga Morung system is a concrete, memorable image that shows deep knowledge.
How do we ensure we link the examples back to the main point in each theme?
ठीक है? You use connecting phrases. For instance, after giving the Mizoram example, you'd say, this demonstrates the direct link between missionary-led education and socio-economic upliftment. Always close the loop.
Was the political unification of the Nagas an intended or unintended consequence of conversion?
That's a great question. It was largely an unintended consequence. The primary goal of missionaries was religious conversion. However, a shared religion and education in a common script naturally created a shared identity and a platform for political expression.
Okay. What about the conclusion? How do we make it impactful without just repeating the points?
You synthesize. Instead of saying it did A, B, and C, you can say something like, thus, Christianity acted as a powerful catalyst for modernization, fundamentally reshaping tribal societies from their social fabric to their political aspirations.
Is there a risk of sounding biased while explaining such a sensitive topic? How to avoid it?
Yes, the risk is always there. The key is to use neutral academic language. Avoid words like unfortunately or thankfully. Stick to reporting the findings of scholars like Elwin, Heimendorf, and Roy. Let the facts and scholarly opinions speak for themselves.
Excellent advice. Okay, time for our practice cue. Listeners, pause and try saying this. Christianity's influence on Indian tribes is visible in Mizoram's high literacy, but also in the decline of traditional institutions like the Naga Morung.
A very specific and effective line to practice.
And the mini recap?
Christianity was a modernizing force that brought education and political unity, but often at the cost of deep-rooted cultural practices.
Great. We've covered Christianity twice now. Let's move to Islam. The sixth question is, what has been the impact of Islam on the scheduled tribes in India? 15M 2017.
Okay, this is a less discussed area, which makes it very interesting.
Broad, micro theme. The influence of Islam on the social, cultural, and identity structures of tribal communities.
The core idea here is that Islam, like Buddhism, offered an escape from the caste system. Its message of social equality was a major draw for many marginalized communities.
A real-life analogy for this.
Imagine you are part of a club where you're always treated as a junior member, no matter how hard you work. Then another club opens up next door where the rule is everyone is equal from day one.
You'd probably switch clubs.
Khairi Islam. That's the appeal Islam held for some tribal groups. Now, let's break it down. Introduction would mention that the interaction is centuries old, driven by traders, Sufi saints, and rulers, and it offered a path to social mobility.
Okay, what about the body?
First, social equality and dignity. The best example is the Bakarwal Gujjars of Jammu and Kashmir. Their adoption of Islam provided them with a cohesive identity and helped them move away from the rigidities of the caste structure they were on the fringes of.
Second point.
Cultural syncretism and hybrid identities. It wasn't always a complete wipeout of old culture. The Mio community in Rajasthan and Haryana is a classic example. They are Muslims, but they also celebrate Hindu festivals like Diwali and Holi.
That's fascinating. A true hybrid culture.
Second, third, economic integration. Conversion often led to integration into larger trade networks. The Tadvi Bhils of Gujarat, after converting to Islam, became more integrated with wider economic systems.
In the flip side.
Cultural erosion and identity shift.
Okay.
Over time, adoption of Islam did lead to a gradual decline in their original animistic beliefs and social customs. Their identity shifted from being primarily tribal to being part of a larger religious community.
So the conclusion would be?
The conclusion would state that Islam's impact was a mixed bag. It offered social dignity and economic integration, but also led to a significant shift in cultural and social identity, sometimes diluting their unique tribal heritage.
Let's dive into some cross questions.
Yes.
Structure question.
Yeah.
Why is it important to begin with the social equality aspect?
Because similar to Buddhism, that is the primary driver. It immediately answers the question of why Islam was attractive to them. It sets a logical foundation for the rest of the answer.
The Mio community example. How is it different from the Khasi Christian syncretism?
The Mio syncretism is arguably deeper and more integrated into their daily life, blending festivals and social customs from two major religions over centuries. The Khasi example is more about retaining certain elements of their indigenous faith alongside Christianity. The Mio identity itself is a hybrid.
In the body, how do you balance the positive, social dignity, and negative, cultural erosion aspects without contradicting yourself?
ऐसा क्या हुआ था? By presenting them as two sides of the same coin. You can frame it like this. While the adoption of Islam provided social dignity, this process of integration also came at the cost of. It shows that these outcomes are linked, not contradictory.
Were conversions to Islam mostly voluntary or forced?
This is a debated topic, but historical evidence for tribal communities suggests that the role of Sufi saints and the promise of social equality were far more significant drivers than forced conversion. It was mostly a voluntary process driven by socio-economic factors.
How can one conclude this answer effectively?
By acknowledging the complexity. A good conclusion avoids a simple judgment and instead highlights the dual nature of the impact. It might end by saying, Islam therefore acted as both a force for social liberation and a catalyst for profound cultural reorientation among the tribes it touched.
Why is the Bakarwal Gujjar example so fitting for this answer?
Because it encapsulates the main theme perfectly. They are a pastoral, nomadic tribe, and their Islamic identity gives them a cohesive social structure and a sense of belonging that helps them navigate their life across different regions. It's a living example of the theory.
Superb. Now for the practice cue. Listeners, pause and say this. Islam offered social dignity to tribes like the Bakarwal Gujjars, but this often involved cultural syncretism as seen in the Mio community.
Practice it. It connects the key examples to the core ideas.
And the mini recap.
Islam provided an escape from caste for some tribes, leading to a new hybrid identity, but also a weakening of their original traditions.
Fantastic. This brings us to a very unique and specific question, number 7. Write a note on Islam and matrilineal in the context of scheduled tribes. 10M 2016.
Yes, this is a gem of a question. It tests deep, specific knowledge.
Broad microtheme. The interaction and coexistence of patrilineal Islamic norms with the matrilineal systems of certain tribal communities.
The core idea here is the tension and adaptation between two opposing systems. Islam is generally patrilineal, descent and inheritance are traced through the father. Matrilineal is the opposite. So what happens when they meet?
Do you have a real-life analogy for this?
Yeah. Imagine trying to merge two software programs with completely different operating systems. One is Windows, the other is macOS. You can't just merge them, you need a special bridge, an emulator to make them work together.
So a hybrid system is created.
Precisely. The introduction to this answer would define both Islam's patrilineal tradition and matrilineal. Then it would state that their interaction has led to unique syncretic systems, not a simple victory of one over the other.
And the prime example for this is?
The tribes of Lakshadweep. This would be the main focus of the body. The people of Lakshadweep are predominantly Muslim, following the Shafi school of law. But they have traditionally followed a matrilineal system called Marumakatayam.
How does that work in practice?
So property, especially ancestral property called Tharawad, is inherited through the female line, from mother to daughter. The husband moves into the wife's house after marriage. This is in direct contrast to conventional Islamic practice.
So how have they reconciled this?
They've created a dual system. For religious matters, prayers, fasting, marriage ceremonies, they follow Islamic law. But for property inheritance and lineage, they stick to their traditional matrilineal customs. It's a fascinating separation of spheres.
So the conclusion would highlight this unique adaptation.
Yes, the conclusion would emphasize that the Lakshadweep case study demonstrates the resilience of local cultural systems. It shows that religion doesn't always erase pre-existing social structures, but can adapt and coexist with them, creating a unique hybrid socio-legal framework.
Brilliant. Let's do some quick cross questions. Structure question. For a write a note on question, is it better to have a single detailed case study or multiple brief examples?
For a niche topic like this, a single detailed case study, like Lakshadweep, is far more effective. It allows you to show depth of knowledge rather than just breadth. It's about quality over quantity.
Is the Lakshadweep system under any pressure to change?
Yes, absolutely. With increasing contact with the mainland, modern education, and more orthodox interpretations of Islam, there is a growing pressure to shift towards a patrilineal system. So this unique hybrid system is currently in a state of flux.
How can you make the introduction grab the examiner's attention?
By highlighting the paradox right at the start. You could begin with a line like, the interaction between Islam and matrilineal presents a fascinating paradox where a globally patrilineal religion has adapted to a deeply rooted local matrilineal custom.
Are there other examples of this, even if less prominent?
Gee, yes. Some tribal communities in Southeast Asia, like the Minangkabau in Indonesia, also practice a similar blend of Islam and matrilineal. Mentioning this briefly can show wider knowledge, but the focus should remain on the Indian context.
How do you structure the body of the answer?
It would be best to have 3 small parts. First, explain the traditional matrilineal system, Marumakatayam. Second, explain the Islamic patrilineal norms. Third, explain how the two coexist in a dual system, covering marriage, residence, and inheritance.
Final question. What is the key takeaway a person should have from this answer?
The key takeaway is that culture is not monolithic or static. It's fluid and adaptive. The Lakshadweep example is a perfect illustration of how communities negotiate and blend different traditions to create a system that works for them.
Perfect. Okay. Listeners, time to practice a specific line. Pause and say. In Lakshadweep, a unique hybrid system exists where Islamic faith coexists with a traditional matrilineal inheritance system known as Marumakatayam.
That one line summarizes the entire note.
And the mini recap.
The case of Lakshadweep shows that religion can adapt to strong local cultures, leading to a unique blend of Islamic faith and matrilineal tradition.
This is getting more and more interesting. Now we shift our focus specifically to women. Question number 8. Discuss the impact of Hinduism on the tribal women of Central India. 10M 2015.
A very focused and important question.
Broad micro theme. The influence of patriarchal Hindu norms on the relatively egalitarian status of tribal women in central India. Okay? The core idea here is that tribal societies, while not perfect, generally offered women more freedom, mobility, and economic agency compared to mainstream caste Hindu society.
Yes. The contact with Hinduism often led to an erosion of this status.
Analogy time?
Yeah.
Imagine a free-flowing river. That's the traditional status of many tribal women. Then a dam is built on it. That's the patriarchal norms of Hinduism. The flow of the river is restricted, channeled, and controlled.
That's a powerful image. Okay, let's break down the answer. The introduction would establish this contrast, the traditionally higher status of tribal women versus the patriarchal structure of caste society.
Yes, and you had mentioned that the impact has been largely negative, leading to what some scholars call internal colonization of women's autonomy.
What points would the body cover?
Ji.
First, loss of economic agency. In many Central Indian tribes, like the Gonds and Baigas, women had significant roles in agriculture and forest-based livelihoods. With the adoption of Hindu practices, the concept of men as breadwinners and women confined to domestic chores started to creep in, reducing their economic independence.
Second point.
Second point, imposition of social restrictions. Practices like parda, veiling, restrictions on movement, and the concept of female purity and pollution were introduced. This curtailed the social freedom that tribal women traditionally enjoyed.
What about marriage practices?
That's the third point. Decline in freedom of choice in marriage. Tribal societies often had practices like ghutul, youth dormitories, which allowed for greater interaction and choice in selecting partners. With Hinduization, arranged marriages and practices like dowry, which were alien to them, began to appear. And their role in religion.
Fourth point, exclusion from religious roles. Many tribal belief systems had female shamans and priestesses.
The shift to Brahmanical Hinduism with its exclusively male priesthood marginalized women from these positions of spiritual authority.
So the conclusion would be quite critical.
Yes, the conclusion would summarize that the process of Hinduization, while offering a path of assimilation, has had a detrimental effect on the status of tribal women in central India, pushing them into a more subordinate and restricted role, mirroring the patriarchal structures of the wider society.
Got it. Let's do the cross questions. Structure question. For the 10 marker, on a specific group, tribal women, how many points are ideal in the body? 4. Well-explained points, like the ones we discussed, are perfect. It shows comprehensive coverage without being superficial. Each point should have a clear heading and a brief explanation or example.
Was there any resistance from tribal women to these changes?
That's a very important aspect. While historical records are often silent on this, we can infer resistance through the persistence of many traditional practices. Also, many women-led contemporary tribal movements are actively trying to reclaim their lost cultural and economic agency.
How do you avoid making generalizations about Hinduism or tribal women?
By being specific. Instead of Hinduism, say patriarchal norms prevalent in caste Hindu society. Instead of tribal women, specify tribal women in central India, such as among the Gonds and Baigas. Specificity is key to a nuanced answer.
Did this impact happen uniformly across all tribes in central India?
No, it was not uniform. The degree of impact depended on the level of contact and assimilation. Tribes living in more isolated areas retained their traditional structures for longer. The impact was strongest on tribes that were more integrated into the local agrarian economy.
How can the introduction be made powerful?
By starting with a sharp contrast. For example, while the women of mainstream caste society were often confined by patriarchal norms, the tribal women of central India traditionally enjoyed a life of relative freedom and agency. However, the increasing contact with Hinduism has fundamentally challenged this egalitarian ethos.
What's the main takeaway here?
The main takeaway is that cultural contact is not gender neutral. It affects men and women differently. In this case, mainstreaming for tribal women often meant a loss of their traditional autonomy and a step down in social status.
Very clear. Okay. Listeners, let's practice this one. Pause and say, the impact of Hinduism on tribal women in central India has often meant a loss of their traditional economic agency and social freedom due to the imposition of patriarchal norms.
A solid line to remember.
And the mini recap?
For many tribal women in central India, assimilation into Hindu society has paradoxically meant a move towards greater social and economic subordination.
Right. Now we move on to question number 9, another one on Christianity, but from a different angle. Critically examine the impact of Christianity on tribal societies from a social exclusion and inclusion perspective. 20 marker 2014.
A 20 marker. This requires more depth and a clear theoretical framework.
Broad micro theme, analyzing Christianity's dual role in promoting inclusion of tribals into the modern world while causing exclusion from their own traditional culture.
Right. The keywords here are social exclusion and inclusion. So every point must be tied back to these concepts. The core idea is that Christianity was a double-edged sword. It included tribals in some spheres, education, politics, but excluded them from others, their own cultural heritage.
The analogy of the modern school still works here, right?
Perfectly. The student is included in a new world of opportunities, but becomes excluded from his old circle of friends and traditions.
Let's structure this long answer. Introduction?
The introduction must define social inclusion, access to rights, resources and opportunities, and exclusion, denial of these. Then it should state the argument that Christianity in tribal India has been a powerful engine for both processes simultaneously.
Okay. The body will need multiple dimensions for a 20 marker.
Absolutely. We can divide the body into two main parts. Part A, Christianity as a force for inclusion.
And what are the points under that?
First, inclusion into modern education and healthcare. We've discussed the Mizoram example. This broke their exclusion from modern knowledge systems. Second, political inclusion. It gave them a unified voice and platform, helping them engage with the modern nation-state. Nagaland and Meghalaya are examples. Third, inclusion into a global community. It connected them to a global religious network, reducing their sense of isolation.
Okay, that's a strong case for inclusion. Now for part B, Christianity as a cause of exclusion.
First, exclusion from indigenous cultural heritage. This is the cultural alienation Warrior Elvin talked about. Conversion often meant rejecting their folklore, festivals, and belief systems, leading to a sense of rootlessness.
Second point?
Exclusion within the community. This is internal exclusion. It created a deep rift between Christian and non-Christian members of the same tribe, disrupting social harmony. We can use the Santhal example again. And the third point.
Exclusion from traditional power structures. By replacing the authority of traditional chiefs and village councils with that of the church, it excluded many from their own indigenous systems of governance.
So, how do we conclude a complex answer like this?
The conclusion must synthesize these two opposing forces. It should argue that Christianity's role cannot be judged as simply good or bad. It was a transformative force that fundamentally altered the parameters of inclusion and exclusion for tribal societies. It solved some forms of exclusion while creating new ones.
Let's move to the cross questions. Structure question. For a 20 marker, is the two-part body, inclusion versus exclusion, the best structure? Yes, it's the clearest and most direct way to answer the question. It directly addresses the exclusion and inclusion perspective demanded by the prompt and keeps the answer highly organized and easy to follow.
Did the missionaries intend to cause this internal exclusion?
Generally, no. Their primary goal was evangelization. The social fragmentation was an unintended but almost inevitable consequence of introducing a powerful new ideology into a close-knit community.
How do you maintain a critical tone throughout the answer?
By constantly weighing both sides. Even in the inclusion section, you can add a line like, however, this inclusion came at a price. And in the exclusion section, you can acknowledge the missionaries' developmental work. This constant balancing act is the essence of a critical examination.
Is the inclusion brought by Christianity sustainable without the church's support?
That's the core of the dependency argument by LP Vidyarthi. Critics argue that this inclusion is often dependent on missionary institutions. And true, self-reliant inclusion has been slower to achieve.
How do you transition smoothly between the inclusion part and the exclusion part?
With a clear transition sentence. For example, while Christianity undeniably opened new avenues of inclusion for tribal societies, this transformation was not without its costs, leading to new and profound forms of exclusion.
What's the most sophisticated point to make in this answer?
The idea that Christianity didn't just move tribals from a state of exclusion to inclusion, but rather it changed the very definition of what it meant to be included or excluded. The goalposts themselves were shifted.
That's a very sharp point. Okay, listeners, this is a long one, but let's practice the core idea. Pause and say, Christianity acted as a dual force. It promoted inclusion into modern systems like education, but also caused exclusion from indigenous culture and created social rifts within tribes.
A perfect summary of the dichotomy.
And the mini recap, Christianity was a complex package deal for tribes. It offered a ticket into the modern world, but required them to leave some of their cultural baggage behind.
Whew, that was a deep one.
Let's move to the 10th question, which is about the process itself. Given an account of the process of religious conversions among the Indian tribes, 20M, 2013.
Another 20 marker. This one is about the how and why of conversion, the mechanics of it.
Broad micro-theme. The multi-causal process of religious conversion among tribes, driven by socio-economic, political, and missionary factors.
The key here is process. It's not a single event. It's a journey with multiple causes, actors, and consequences. The answer must reflect this complexity.
What's a good analogy for this?
Think of a river changing its course. It doesn't happen overnight. It's caused by a combination of factors: heavy rainfall, push factors like oppression, soil erosion, weakening of traditional beliefs, and a new lower path opening up, pull factors like a new religion.
That's a great way to visualize it. So the introduction would state that religious conversion is not just a spiritual phenomenon, but a complex socio-historical process.
Exactly. And it's driven by a combination of push and pull factors. The body of the answer should be structured around these drivers.
Okay, so what are the main drivers or stages in this process?
First, socio-economic drivers, the push factors. This includes poverty, land alienation, exploitation by moneylenders and landlords. For many tribes, their existing system was failing to protect them. Conversion offered a hope for a better, more secure life. We can use the example of the Santals in colonial Bengal turning to Christianity for protection against zamindars.
Okay, what's the second driver?
The role of missionary work, the pull factors. This is where we discuss the methods. Missionaries didn't just preach. They built schools, hospitals, and provided economic aid. This service model made the new religion very attractive. The work of missionaries in the Northeast is the classic case study.
Are there political factors as well?
Yes, that's the third point. Political factors and resistance. Sometimes, conversion becomes a tool of political assertion. It can be a way to create a distinct identity to resist assimilation by a dominant culture. The adoption of Christianity by some Naga groups was linked to their desire for political self-determination.
And what are the outcomes or consequences of this process?
That's the fourth part of the body. Consequences of conversion. This is where we can briefly touch upon the outcomes we've discussed at length. Syncretism, cultural loss, social fragmentation, and empowerment. It's the end point of the process.
So the conclusion would tie all these threads together.
Correct. The conclusion would reiterate that the process of conversion is multi-causal and cannot be simplified to just lure or force. It's a response to historical conditions of distress and a search for dignity and empowerment, with complex and often contradictory outcomes.
Let's get into the cross questions. Structure question. Why is a drivers-based structure, socioeconomic, missionary, political, effective for a process question?
Because a process is all about causes and effects. This structure allows you to explain the different forces that initiate and sustain the process of conversion, making the explanation logical and comprehensive.
Does the Indian Constitution protect the right to convert?
Yes, Article 25 of the Constitution guarantees the freedom to profess, practice, and propagate religion. However, the propagate part is often at the center of legal and political debates, especially concerning conversions.
Right.
You can use them as examples under each driver. For example, under socio-economic drivers, you can mention both Santals converting to Christianity and some Bhils converting to Islam to escape marginalization. This shows that the process has common drivers across different religions.
What is the role of revivalist movements like the Birsa Munda movement in this process?
They represent a counter-process. They are a reaction against external religious influences and an attempt to reform and strengthen the indigenous religion from within. They are a crucial part of the story of resistance.
For a 20 marker, should we also discuss the state's role or recent controversies?
The historical process to the present day.
What's the most common mistake students make in this type of question?
The most common mistake is oversimplification. They either portray conversion as a purely spiritual act or as a simple case of missionaries luring people. A good answer avoids this binary and explores the complex interplay of social, economic, and personal factors.
Excellent point. Okay, time for the practice cue. Listeners, pause and try saying this. The process of religious conversion among tribes is driven by a mix of push factors, like socio-economic exploitation, and pull factors, like missionary-led education and healthcare.
A great sentence that captures the core mechanic.
And the mini recap.
Tribal religious conversion is not a simple event, but a complex process, often rooted in a search for dignity and a better life in response to historical oppression.
Perfect. We are at our final question, number 11. This one seems to be a grand summary. Discuss the bearings of Hindu society on the tribal population of India, 20M 2012.
Yes, a very broad, comprehensive 20 marker. It's a chance to bring together many of the themes we've discussed.
Broad micro theme, a comprehensive discussion of the multidimensional impact of Hindu society on tribal life, from cultural assimilation to economic marginalization.
The key here is bearings, which means influences or effects. We need to cover all aspects, social, religious, economic, and political. It's a 360-degree view.
The analogy of the big food chain taking over the local stall seems very apt here.
Absolutely. It perfectly captures the process of absorption, standardization, and the loss of original flavor. The introduction would set the stage by describing the relationship as ancient and complex, characterized by both assimilation and exploitation. It can mention the two opposing views of G.S. Ghurye, tribes as backward Hindus, and Warrior Elvin, tribes as distinct cultures.
So, the body should be thematically structured.
Yes, that's the best way. First theme, religious and cultural impact. Here we discuss Sanskritization, the integration of tribal deities like Jagannath, and the adoption of Hindu festivals, but also the erosion of their unique animistic beliefs and folklore.
Second theme.
Social impact. This is where we discuss the introduction of the caste system and hierarchy into egalitarian tribal societies, the concept of purity and pollution, and the general placement of assimilated tribes at the lower rungs of the caste ladder. We can also re-mention the negative impact on women's status.
And third, the economic impact.
This is crucial. The economic impact has been largely negative. We discuss land alienation, the loss of control over forest resources, Jal Jangal Zameen, and their transformation into landless agricultural laborers or bonded labor within the feudal Hindu agrarian system, as noted by scholars like D.D. Kosambi.
And the fourth theme.
Political impact. This covers the erosion of their traditional autonomous political systems, like village councils, and their subsumption into the larger state structure, often in a subordinate position. We can also touch upon the modern-day efforts of Hindutva ideology to politically define them as part of a monolithic Hindu identity.
This is very comprehensive. How do we conclude this vast topic?
The conclusion should offer a balanced summary. It should state that the interaction with Hindu society has been a process of uneven integration. While it connected tribes to a larger civilizational network, this integration often came at the cost of their social equality, economic autonomy, and, most importantly, their distinct cultural identity.
Let's do our final set of cross questions. Structure question. For such a broad 20 marker, how do you ensure the answer doesn't become a list of random points?
That by using a clear thematic structure, religious, social, economic, political, and ensuring each paragraph starts with a clear topic sentence that links back to the main question. The structure is what holds it all together.
The term backward Hindus by G.S. Ghurye, what does it exactly imply?
It implies that in Ghurye's view, tribes were never truly separate from Hindu society.
Right.
He saw them as communities that were simply left behind in the process of civilizational development and just needed to be fully assimilated or brought up to speed. This view is now heavily contested.
How do you weave in different scholars' names Ghurye, Elvin, Srinivas, Kosambi naturally into the answer?
You associate each scholar with their key idea. For example, this process of social mobility through emulation is what M.N. Srinivas termed Sanskritization. Or the economic consequences were stark, as D.D. Kosambi noted, their transformation into bonded laborers. This makes the answer authoritative, not just a list of names.
Is there any positive economic impact of this interaction?
In some cases, integration did lead to access to new markets and technologies. However, the overwhelming scholarly consensus is that the tribes, lacking the capital and social networks, were largely unable to compete and ended up as the losers in this economic interaction, losing their land and resources.
How can you use the introduction to frame the entire debate? Yeah.
By presenting the Elwin versus Ghurye debate right at the start, the relationship between Hindu society and tribes has long been debated, oscillating between two poles, Varya Elwin's view of them as distinct cultures needing protection and G.S. Ghurye's view of them as backward Hindus needing assimilation. This answer will explore the complex bearings of this interaction.
Final question. What is the single most important dimension to emphasize in this answer?
The economic dimension, the loss of control over resources. Because for tribal communities, their culture, religion, and social structure are all deeply intertwined with their land and forests. Losing control of their economic base inevitably leads to the collapse of their entire way of life.
That's a very powerful point to end on. Okay, listeners, our final practice cue, pause and say this. The bearing of Hindu society on tribes has been a dual process of cultural assimilation through Sanskritization and economic marginalization through the loss of land and resources.
Excellent line. It captures the essence.
And the final mini recap for this question?
The centuries-long contact with Hindu society has integrated tribes into India's mainstream, but often as a subordinated and dispossessed population.
तो दोस्तों, ये था हमारा आज का डिटेल डिस्कशन. हमने इंडिया की ट्राइबल पॉपुलेशंस पर अलग-अलग मेनस्ट्रीम इन्फ्लुएंसेस के असर को समझा. Let's do a quick recap of the broad macro themes.
बिल्कुल. चलो, सारे 11 क्वेश्चंस के कोर आइडियाज को समराइज करते हैं. फर्स्ट, ट्राइबल नॉन ट्राइबल कॉन्टैक्ट. हमने देखा कि ये कॉन्टैक्ट डेवलपमेंट और कल्चरल इरोजन दोनों लाता है. ये एक डबल एज सोर्ड है.
Right.
सेकंड, क्रिश्चियनिटीज इम्पैक्ट. इसने एजुकेशन और हेल्थ में सुधार किया, लेकिन सोशल फ्रेगमेंटेशन और ट्रेडिशनल बिलीव्स का डिक्लाइन भी हुआ. एक कॉम्प्लेक्स डाइकोटमी.
Third.
संस्कृताइजेशन के थ्रू असिमिलेशन हुआ, जगन्नाथ जैसा सिंक्रेटिज्म देखा, पर इसने कास्ट हायरार्की और इकोनॉमिक एक्सप्लॉयटेशन को भी जन्म दिया.
बुद्धिज्म का इम्पैक्ट.
ये एक इगैलिटेरियन ऑल्टरनेटिव था जिसने सोशल अपलिफ्टमेंट किया, लेकिन इसका प्रभाव लिमिटेड और अनइवन था. फिर हमने देखा इस्लाम्स इम्पैक्ट. इसने सोशल मोबिलिटी और डिग्निटी दी, लेकिन इससे कल्चरल इरोजन और आइडेंटिटी शिफ्ट भी हुआ.
Right. और इस्लाम एंड मैट्रिलियनी.
एक यूनिक केस जहां इस्लाम के पैट्रिलिनियल नॉर्म्स और लोकल मैट्रिलिनियल कस्टम्स जैसे लक्षद्वीप में कोएग्जिस्ट करते हैं, एक हाइब्रिड सिस्टम बनाते हुए.
Perfect. और हिंदुइज्म ऑन ट्राइबल वुमेन.
हमने समझा कि इसने पेट्रियार्कल नॉर्म्स को बढ़ाया, जिससे ट्राइबल वुमेन की ट्रेडिशनल ऑटोनॉमी और प्रॉपर्टी राइट्स कम हुए.
और आखिरी के कुछ पॉइंट्स.
हमने देखा कि रिलीजियस कन्वर्जन्स का प्रोसेस सोशियो इकोनॉमिक रीजंस, मिशनरी वर्क और पॉलिटिकल फैक्टर्स से ड्रिवन होता है. और फाइनली हमने सारे थ्रेड्स को एक साथ लाकर हिंदू सोसाइटी का ट्राइबल पॉपुलेशन पर कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव बेयरिंग देखा.
So, what does this all mean? इतना सब कुछ जानने के बाद एक सवाल मन में रह जाता है.
ये सवाल है फ्यूचर के बारे में. आज 21st सेंचुरी में जब डेवलपमेंट और इंटीग्रेशन की बात होती है, तो हम वेरियर एल्विन के आइसोलेशनिस्ट अप्रोच और जीएस घुरिये के एसिमिलेशनिस्ट अप्रोच के बीच का रास्ता कैसे निकाल सकते हैं.
Exactly. यही है आज का provocative thought. How can modern India ensure the socio-economic development of its tribal populations without forcing them to sacrifice the very cultural identity that makes them unique? इस पर सोचना जरूर.
उम्मीद है आपको आज का ये एनालिसिस पसंद आया होगा.
अगर हाँ, तो प्लीज हमारे चैनल को सब्सक्राइब करें, इस वीडियो को लाइक करें और कमेंट्स में बताएं कि आप अगला डिस्कशन किस टॉपिक पर चाहते हैं. मिलते हैं अगले गहरे एनालिसिस में. तब तक कीप लर्निंग, कीप क्वेश्चनिंग.